Thank you, Tim, for the introduction, and thanks to the association for the opportunity to speak with you all today. There's some bright lights. I'm excited, ready to get this going. So, when I first thought about what I was going to talk to you for the next 20 minutes, the obvious thing that jumps to mind is all of the mitigation projects that we do in the state with FEMA hazard mitigation assistance grants. Flooding is our #1 risk in the state, and we do a lot of acquisition and demolition projects. We do a lot of elevation projects. We do some stormwater projects. But I quickly thought, you heard a lot about that through all the sessions throughout the week, and so I wanted to focus on maybe some of the more behind the scenes or obscure type of projects that definitely have led to the success of our program over the years. And when I started looking at what those projects were, there was definitely a theme that jumped out pretty quickly, and that was partnership. So what you're not going to hear me say up here today was Steve Ferryman did this, or the mitigation branch did this, because it definitely requires partnerships for all the projects that we do to be successful. And so that would be the definite underlying theme, and I hope that comes out in the presentation. First, just a little bit of background about Ohio EMA Mitigation Branch. We are under the Department of Public Safety, and our mission is up there on the board. 4 of the ways, the largest ways that we strive to meet that mission are listed below. My office is responsible for developing and maintaining the State of Ohio Hazard Mitigation Plan. We assist Ohio communities in their local mitigation planning and project efforts. We administer FEMA's 3 hazard mitigation assistance grant programs. That's the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, the PDM program, and the FMA program. And I'm also the chair of the State Hazard Mitigation Team. That's the team that basically recommends mitigation policy for the state, as well as reviews all of the project applications for the various grant programs. So the first partnership that I want to talk about is my staff. Without them, we're not successful. And you know, I'm blessed to have a great staff at Ohio EMA. Top left there is Jacob Hoover. Next to him is Dan Clevidence. Both of them have been here all week, so hopefully you've had a chance to interact with them. Jacob is a supervisor in the mitigation branch. Dan is a project specialist. Next to him, Sharon is a project specialist. Bottom left, Kevin. So I have 3 project specialists. Luan Nguyen in the middle there, in the bottom, is our state hazard mitigation planner. And next to him is Maeve Hogel. She is our intern in the mitigation branch. And I'm going to talk about each one of them throughout the presentation, so it's always good to have a face with a name. And, you know, I get around to events around the country, and I have the opportunity to speak with state NFIP offices and different mitigation branches from around the country. And there are a lot out there that are single-person shops or 2-person shops. And it's got to be tough, because I don't know how you can run a top-notch program with just 1 or 2 people. Ohio is the 7th largest populated state in the country, and the demands are just too great for the resources that we have for 1 or 2 people. And so FEMA has recently increased the management costs that are available to run these programs. And you know, anything that you can do to support those state programs to build capacity is going to end up helping you all in the end. So I want to talk a little bit about our local hazard mitigation planning efforts at the state. Local hazard mitigation plans are a requirement in order for local communities to access the FEMA hazard mitigation assistance grants. So the planning process is very important to us, and we all know that a good mitigation plan is the first step towards a good mitigation project. So up there on the board, we have 88 counties in the state of Ohio, and that is the status, the current planning status of each of those 88 counties. Most of them are green. You got a few red ones in there. The red ones that are in there, if they're crosshatched, that means they're working on their mitigation plan update with a grant, and so there's a very good chance of success there. But we're always looking for opportunities to improve processes in the state. And this is, that might be tough to read, and I apologize for that, but this is the basic process from the time that a local community gets a mitigation planning grant all the way up until that grant is approved by FEMA. And there's a lot of steps. That plan moves back and forth a lot between the local government, the state government, state to FEMA, back to the state, back to the locals. There's a lot of review that goes on of that mitigation plan. Well, following Hurricane Sandy in 2013, FEMA developed a program that they call Program Administration by States. And essentially what that is FEMA's delegating some authority to the states to review local mitigation plans and projects. They don't like that word delegation, but that's essentially what it is. So after our last disaster, we entered into an agreement with FEMA for this program administration by states, whereby the state can review and approve 4 out of every 5 local hazard mitigation plans. And that's been great for us. It's been great for the locals because it speeds up that review and approval process. A lot of times you're developing a plan at the same time you're developing a project application, so it's not holding up the projects. There's less back and forth of that plan. And essentially, as a result of this program, we've eliminated 6 steps in the process. It's good for FEMA because now the State Hazard Mitigation Planner, Steve Green at FEMA Region 5, is only reviewing 1 plan out of every 5 instead of 5. So there's a benefit for everybody involved. And so I strongly recommend that you look into this program if you haven't already, because it is a good program. So I want to talk a little bit about some of my collaborations with The Ohio State University. I'm a Buckeye. I graduated from Ohio State, so OH. All right, there we go. Thank you. So my professional collaboration with the university started probably about 8 years ago when I was approached by a professor from the Austin E. Knowlton School of Architecture and Planning to be a guest speaker in a resilience course that they were teaching for undergrads. And so I gladly accepted. I'm always willing to take the opportunity to influence young minds and speak the gospel of mitigation. And after the course was over, I was talking with the professor, and she said, "So I've got this other class that I teach. They're graduate level students, and I do this every other fall. And they're looking for a project. It's a studio course. They're looking for a project to do this fall. Do you have anything for them to do?" Well, go back a couple slides to those to the map with the red counties, and I said, yeah, as a matter of fact, I could put them to work in a couple of these counties. So that started an effort with the university where every 2 years we have a group of these students that goes out to a county that needs help, and they basically do all the research, write the plan for that county. In return, the county EMA director agrees to organize all of the local planning meetings. And FEMA, for their part, agreed to kind of do an expedited review of the mitigation plan because they're trying to do all of this work in a semester, which is 3 months. So any of you that have ever developed a mitigation plan know that that's a really tight time frame. The slide that I had up previously, that usually runs 18 to 24 months to develop a local mitigation plan. So they're doing this really rapidly. We've done it in 3 counties now. It's been a great success. The students get real-world experience in planning, and again, the locals get a free mitigation plan out of the deal. One of the other things that came out of this collaboration with Ohio State was that we developed an internship at the Ohio Emergency Management Agency. We looked at all this great talent down there that you could get for pretty cheap and said, we need to get some interns in here and help us out doing some work. An area where our staff was lacking a little bit was GIS. And so every year, the university puts out a booklet, basically, of 60 or so students with their resumes. You can pick from the booklet, interview these students, and we've had 3 interns now that came through our program. And the first one is now with us full-time. Lawan Nguyen is now the State Hazard Mitigation Planner. And so that worked out great. At the time that he was getting ready to graduate, our planner was retiring, and he slid right in and has done a great job for us. Our second planner ended up getting a full-time gig in the city of Las Vegas. We were trying to get him on board, but the wheels of government at Ohio weren't working as fast as Las Vegas, I guess. And then the third one, I showed you a photo of there earlier, Maeve. So that's been a great program for us as well. And the fourth bullet there I'm going to talk about here in a second. Talk a little bit about the state hazard mitigation plan. 2 weeks ago, I had a great day. That was May 13th. So just like the local plans, every 5 years the state mitigation plan expires, and ours expired May 13th. And so, we started the update of this plan about 18 months ago. And to have that plan finally approved was definitely a big burden lifted off myself and the staff. A lot of work goes into those plan updates. And if it doesn't get updated and approved, Steve doesn't have a job. So it was very important that that happened. There are 2 tiers in the FEMA world of state mitigation plans. There's a standard plan and an enhanced plan. And I'm not going to get into the details about the differences between the two. If you're interested, you can find that in 44 CFR 201. But basically, for an enhanced plan, the state has to do a little bit more in the state plan. But you also have to go through an evaluation of how your state is doing in implementing the mitigation grants. And that's probably the biggest hurdle to a state becoming an enhanced plan state. So why would you want to become an enhanced plan state? Well, enhanced plan states get additional funds after a presidential disaster declaration occurs in your state. And as a result of our enhanced plan in Ohio, which we've had that status since 2012, we've got an additional $6.8 million in federal HMGP funds in the state of Ohio as a result of us being an enhanced plan state, which I know for New York and Puerto Rico, you're like, yeah, that's pocket change. But for Ohio, that's a lot of money, and we can do a lot of good mitigation grants with those projects. And that $6.8 million is actually probably a low estimate. It is a low estimate because the DR 4424 there on the right was just declared last month. So that's not even a 30-day estimate for what that disaster is going to be. It's likely going to double. Talk a little bit about our website that we call SHARP. We developed this website probably 10 years ago. And at the time, it was pretty cutting edge. It was kind of a one-stop shop for mitigation information in the state. The first thing that jumps out at you there is the number of properties that we've mitigated and an estimate of the damages prevented through that mitigation. But it's got basically all things mitigation on there. There's a PDF copy of the state hazard mitigation plan. There's PDF copies of all the local hazard mitigation plans. And you can dig down through a map, a GIS map that's based on Google, and find out information about all the mitigation projects that we've implemented in the state of Ohio, down to the structure level where you can find before and after photographs of the mitigation project. You can dig into the financials. If it was an acquisition, we've got copies of the deeds on there, so it's just a wealth of information. As part of the grant that we use to update the state mitigation plan, we're going to update this website as well. And the biggest addition to the website that I'm most excited about is we're basically going to do a digital summary of the state mitigation plan. And, a lot of work, like I said, goes into the state mitigation plan update. It's a 4-inch thick document, 700 and some pages. But the challenge is who's picking that up and reading it, right? So we want to get something that's, a little bit more approachable. If anybody's familiar with the National Climate Assessment website, something like that, where they take a very complex subject matter and boil it down into easy to understand format with lots of nice graphics and photos. So that's what we're going for. We're working with our partners in New York. I don't know if they're here in the room or not, but they have a really nice website. They basically transitioned their state plan to an entirely digital format. So we're working with them. They have a lot of good ideas. And hopefully I'm here talking about that at the conference next year. So moving away from planning into the projects, we have generally anywhere from 80 to 100 open projects at any given time in the state of Ohio. Most of those were for PDM or FMA, which are the competitive grants, because the state went for about a 4 or 5 year period without a presidential disaster declaration. This was the disaster declaration that we got in April of 2018 for flooding in February on the Ohio River. And it was a pretty significant event. It was the worst flooding on the Ohio River since 1997. We had 22 counties that were declared for public assistance. Public assistance are those funds that are paying for roads, bridges, infrastructure after a disaster event. 22 counties declared. This is the Appalachian part of the state, so it's quite a bit hillier than where we're at right now. There was $20 million in HMGP funds available as a part of this disaster declaration, and probably one of the things that I'm most proud of is that Ohio holds the land speed record for the fastest HMGP project ever awarded. We did it in 36 days, okay? And so some of you probably are familiar with these programs are going, how in the world did you make that happen? Well, the stars and the moon had to align. Basically, this disaster was declared at the time that FEMA was announcing which projects were going to be selected for review for the competitive grants. We had one that wasn't selected, and so when FEMA came to the Joint Field Office, I handed them my admin plan that was all typed up and ready to go. I handed them this project, and I gave them a challenge. You know, let's see how fast we can do this. If we're all rowing in the same direction, let's see what we can do. And they accepted the challenge. And it took, again, a lot of coordination and alignment, both with FEMA Region 5 and the staff of the JFO, but we did it in 36 days. It was kind of cool. Another interesting partnership that came out of this particular disaster declaration was we were approached by the Ohio Air National Guard when we were in the EOC, the Emergency Operations Center, for this event. And they said, we're going to do some aerial flyovers of the affected area. Is there any areas that you would like us to concentrate on? And I said, well, go back to that website that I just talked about. Yeah, get on our website. We've got a map of all of the areas where we've done projects, and I'd like you to fly over those and tell me what they look like. And so that's what they did, and they pulled together all that information into a slide set where they showed basically what was the aerial extent of the 1997 flood, what was the aerial extent of the 2018 flood, with the mitigation area highlighted. And what that enabled us to do was to very quickly identify where we would have success stories that we could set folks in the JFO to work developing. And it also helped us look at where we would have areas where we needed to do future mitigation projects. Oops. I want to talk about a little bit about a different project here in the village of Ottawa. The village of Ottawa is 60 miles or so that way in the Blanchard River watershed, just west of where we're at today. And the village has a serious flooding problem. They've been flooded multiple times in the last 10 years. But they're lucky in that they have a great local floodplain administrator and mitigation project manager. I think she's hopefully here in the room today, Denise Balba, who's really taken the bull by the horns. And we've done a number of projects in this community and acquired about 60 properties. But those properties were kind of scattered about through the village, because keep in mind, these are voluntary programs. And you got to kind of chip away as you get funds and as you get people that are willing to take an interest in the properties. So this is a map of the parcels that we've acquired. And I was contacted in the spring of 2017 by Rebecca Kisslinger from the Environmental Law Institute. It's a think tank out of Washington, D.C., and she had working with her a fellow named David from the University of North Carolina, and they were interested in working with a community who was trying to redevelop some of these open space lots, and they wanted to set up a series of meetings with the communities where they would bring together all the local officials in the community, and that's the picture here, where we had the mayor, city council members, local business leaders, a really well-attended public meeting where we laid out where these properties were at and some of the potential options for reuse that would comply with the FEMA criteria for these properties, because they are deed-restricted properties. You're limited as to what you can do. One of the businesses that showed up to the meeting that had an interest in these properties was a local architecture firm, and they actually came with some drawings of a stage in one of the areas that was in the downtown village This village has an event every year that they call Little Nashville, and they get national music acts to come in and perform. They've been blocking off streets and doing this in the street up until now, but they were interested in turning one of these properties into a stage. And so working through this whole process, the Environmental Law Institute developed a report at the end, and basically from there, the village picked up the ball and ran and started chipping away at these projects. And the first one was this stage. Well, they got this thing built in the fall of last year. It turned out great. This picture doesn't show the grass that's there now. And they actually had their first concert on it late last fall. That's another picture kind of zoomed out of the stage there. We pulled the Ohio State students that I mentioned earlier from one of the planning classes into this project as well, and they drew some kind of representations of what some of these other potential open space projects might look like. This is Arrowhead Park, where we did an acquisition of a mobile home park. They're currently in the process of turning that into a canoe launch. They're putting soccer fields in another one of those lots. So they're really making great progress in reusing these properties. And I'm getting time's up, so that's good. I think we're at the last slide here. The last thing I want to talk about is the Silver Jackets program. You can't really have a presentation about partnership and collaboration without talking about the Silver Jackets. I don't know how many folks are familiar with the Silver Jackets initiative. It's an Army Corps of Engineers-led initiative that brings federal, state, local partners to the table to try to solve flood problems and share resources. The Silver Jackets team in the state of Ohio was actually the first Silver Jackets team in the country, and that was in 2005. And we've continually met pretty much quarterly ever since that time. And I don't have time to get into a lot of these projects here, but I am going to talk just a second about the bottom one there, and it's one that we just submitted for potential funding this year. It's a structure inventory project where, again, we're utilizing partners' resources to get a great product here. And I think what we're going to do is the Army Corps of Engineers has a LiDAR unit that they can strap to the top of a vehicle and drive around neighborhoods and get finished floor elevations. So we're going to do that in 2 neighborhoods down in southern Ohio that were impacted by the recent flooding in February of this year. Then we're going to work with FEMA through the Risk Map program to do some depth grids in those same areas. We're going to overlay the depth grids on these finished floor elevations and have some community meetings with the impacted property owners and local officials and talk to them about flood insurance. We're going to talk to them about the HMA program. So I'm excited about this opportunity. If you want to learn more about some of the other Silver Jackets projects, if you look in your booklet in H1, there's a presentation this afternoon for some of those projects. So thank you for your time.